Very, very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for coming. Lovely to see a full house as well. And the reason is my fog generating machine. It's an old speaker's trick, but you know what kind of a day we had yesterday with the sun beating down. I thought if that happens tomorrow, I'm going to be singing to myself. So with the permission of the captain, my fog generator was out first thing this morning. And if you hear what sounds like a foghorn, it isn't. It's John Lennon spinning in his grave when he hears me trying to do Beatles songs. So you know the format. If you don't have one yet, just give a wave to one of my charming assistants. You should have, if you want to take part in the quiz, a nice piece of paper, courtesy of Viking, we just don't care, with 15 numbers on it, and a pencil or your pen, whatever. And I'll be playing some tunes, and I normally stop playing when the first rock hits me. And then I'll be asking you a question about the tune I've just played. I actually learned guitar in the 1960s when it was compulsory, and everybody who grew up in the 60s was told, learn guitar or you can't go out or make any friends, so we had to do it. And I learned the old-fashioned, it's called finger-picking style, which has largely died out among the talented, but we shall give it a go. But isn't it wonderful to be back on a ship before this cruise? Isn't it great? And you're very generous. You should applaud as well, I think, because I've been in touch with them over the last 18 months when not much has been happening. The hundreds, near thousands of people at Viking, backstage, in head office and on the ship, working their socks off to get us back to sea. And as you've seen around the ship, they work hard and they're cheerful, aren't they? And a huge round of applause to them, I think, for being brilliant. So I'm trying to think back. Last time before this one, I was on this cruise last week and stayed on this week. And before that, the last one was December 2019. We were on Viking Sea in the Caribbean. And that was quite a trip, quite wonderful. So that was 2 Christmases gone since all that happened. But that was a tremendous cruise. And I don't know about you, but looking forward, we hope to a normal family Christmas this December coming, fingers crossed. I don't know about you, but the last proper Christmas we had a lovely busy time. We had pigs in blankets, or as you might call it, some relatives stayed over. That's my tester gag. If you got that one, you're okay, so that's good. And courtesy of a charity I do some work for, in fact, I'm proudly wearing the waistcoat of the Lord's Taverners, who, as you might know, a cricket and show business charity. We raise millions every year for kids who really need it. And 2-3 Christmases ago, before all the pandemic happened, I was a guest at the Al-Qaeda Christmas party, which is incredible. Fastest game of pass the parcel I've ever seen. They'll get worse. Right, I'll try my first tune. My magic clicker. Recognise these guys, I trust? I'm from the northeast of England. I keep this little bit of northeast twang for a British audience, but when we have largely Americans on board, I speak totally differently. Totally. I said I was having lunch in Oxford the other day with the chaps, and some wonderful people. Hugh Grant came along. And he's like me if he'd worked harder. And you talk to the Americans, and the American one, which is lovely. I have a friend in London called John. You know him? Oh, John from London. Yes, indeed. Know him well. These guys behind me, the vocalist I'll ask you about in a moment. But you see, Chas Chandler, who is on your far right. Brilliant man. I knew Chas. Sadly, he died young. But as well as the Animals, he was the guy who first saw Jimi Hendrix in concert and got him started on his career. And he died young as well, so you're seeing a bit of a theme going on here. But this one I'm going to play now for a while. Chas Chandler saw me playing this at a party, and he said he'd never heard anything like it. Which I took as a compliment, and it turned out it wasn't, but there we go. So I'm just looking around. You're all far too young to have been around in the 60s, so a bit of musical history for you. It goes like this. my bluesy voice coming up. Well, there is a house in New Orleans that they call the Rising Sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy, and God, I know of one. Oh, mother, tell your children not to do as I have done, to spend your life in sin and misery in the house of the rising sun. Short version of House of the Rising Sun. And the question, number one, the guy at the front of the picture behind me, who was the vocalist on that big hit for the Animals back in 1965? So who was the vocalist on that track I've just done? So if you put that down in number one and see how we do on that one. And for all the young people born much later, just do an inspired guess, you may well be right. I'm just thinking, actually, talking about a trace of northeast accents. There's a lovely story about a chap in my part of the world in Durham, just south of Newcastle. He won the lottery, £23 million, quite happy about it. He had a very, very strong Geordie accent. And the funny thing about accents is I presumed once radio, TV, internet happens, all accents will be wiped out, but they're not, are they? For a small country like ours, you can go a few miles and somebody sounds totally different. So if I introduce you to somebody with a real Geordie accent, you wouldn't have a chance. They speak at 300 miles an hour with words you've never heard of. As in, I didn't know I got them, but I was going to tappy lapping. There's some tabs, you know what I mean? The best answer is indeed. So this chap had an accent like that, and his 15-year-old son growing up did too. And he thought now that he was a multimillionaire, he would organise some elocution lessons so that he would talk in Queen's English, receive pronunciation, and change his life prospects a little. So he went to Oxford University and met this chap, Professor Brown, who is the foremost expert in voice training. And he said, Professor Brown, I'd very much like you to kind of change the accent of our lad, know what I mean? He said, well, I can give you a month, but it would be £25,000. He said, no problem, son, there you go. He counted the cash out. So he left his son in Oxford with this incredibly strong Geordie accent, went back a month later to see the professor, said, right, Professor, how's the lad doing, like? He said, Divin, talk to me about your lad. Oh, wonderful. You're on track. You may well recognise that band. And this one was on their first LP, and we'll give this one a go. It's called Baby It's You. It's a lovely, gentle tune, because we often think of the Beatles as playing lots of hard rocking numbers, which they did, but this one was much more gentle. Sha-la-la-la-la-la-la, sha-la-la-la-la-la-la. It's not the way you smile steals my heart, not the way you kiss tears me apart. How many, many nights go by, I sit alone and cry over you. What can I do? Can't help myself. Baby, it's you. So, Baby It's You, recorded by the Beatles on their very first LP, but they did not write that song. And about 2 years before they recorded it, it was a monster hit in the United States for a female group. And the question is, which female group had a big hit with Baby It's You in the United States in about 1962, a couple of years before the Beatles?